when we talk about the difference in markets, we oftentimes hear people that say, well, I need to hire rural or I need to hire remote. Do you guys get that question often? And what do you say when somebody says, should I be considering remote versus rural? Is there a difference?
Well, there is a difference because when you're hiring rural, you're looking at you're looking for it within the population of that rural area. When you're hiring remote, typically people are looking for folks who are willing to work from home and do their job remotely. So they're not traveling into the office every day.
So sometimes people confuse those terms. They'll hear rural and they think they mean like a remote area of the country. We don't mean remote as in like it's out there far away from a city center. Remote in hiring typically means work from home. Is that acceptable to say? Okay, so we're using that language. So what are some differences when you're looking to hire rural? Are there things that you would off the top of your head advise our clients when they come in and they say, look, I'm way out here. What should I expect that's different?
Location is one of the things that we look at. Every ad that comes in, we take a look to find out where that is, because the location that it's published is going to affect the amount of population available to apply to that position. So when you're looking in a rural market, in a rural area, you're going to have less person per square mile. So we're going to have maybe a little bit more of a challenge finding a qualified, experienced person for that position. We often advise folks to look for a fit to the role as opposed to it already having the experience. Look for somebody they can train into the position who's got those characteristics that they're looking for, but also maybe give it a little bit more time to find the experience that they're hunting.
So expectations have to change when somebody realizes they're in a more remote area. The time that it's going to take is obviously going to go longer. This is all a factor of the smaller population.
Exactly.
There's less potential people to apply. So you're going to have a lower chance of finding that right person. Which means that you either A, have to lower your standards, and I don't mean lower your standards as in hire a bad employee, but you talked about maybe dropping the experience, the need for experience, and looking at some other things that I could maybe train them up, because the more parameters you have and the higher you hold the bar in a smaller population, the longer it's going to take you to find that person. Maybe impossible, as opposed to being in downtown Denver or Phoenix or Atlanta or some huge market where you've got potentially hundreds and hundreds of people applying to a sales job, let's say, or thousands applying to an admin job. You can afford to, have everything?
Oftentimes, right? When you're in a densely populated, like a Denver area, you're going to have a lot more folks to choose from who may have all of the qualifications that you're looking for. When you're in a rural area, you may have to relax a little bit on some of the experience. You can still find a great hire. They just might take a little bit more time and investment on the upfront, getting them trained with and giving them the experience that you need them to have.
So set better expectations, or set correct expectations so you're not disappointed thinking, my friend told me that they found this role and filled it in 36 days or 6 days or whatever. Where was that individual, and where they're hunting? I mean, you are realtors for the most part. You understand the keys of location, location, location. You don't want to make the same mistake of, well, my friend sold their house for this price, above asking price, with numerous bids in X days. Where, if they're in the same kind of market, if the same health, same size. So I guess lesson number one, lower your expectations. And that doesn't mean look for a disqualified or a bad hire. Just you're not going to get everything you want as quickly as you may in another market.
That's right. Exactly.
Are there any other things that we talk about? Like oftentimes we'll hear people say, look, I would promote you consider moving to maybe a remote employee if at all possible. Is that more frequent in a rural market?
It certainly is a good consideration. If you're able to hire someone who can work remotely, maybe come into the office 2 days a week instead of all 5, you're going to broaden your pool of applicants significantly by looking for somebody living outside of the close geographical area, but somebody willing to do that job from a remotely.
So that's a good technique to increase the pool.
Absolutely.
Saying I don't have to have experience, but I've got, a resume that looks good. And of course, we're using these personality assessments like the DISC to say they're a great fit for the job. You are also saying expand the geographic territory that you're looking in and make it bigger by considering remote.
Yes, absolutely.
If I have to let go of a few of my ideals, what are some things that you would say are the least important when it comes to looking for this individual? So, oftentimes, for example, we hear people say they have to have experience. That's one variable. I looked at the resume, and the resume was X, Y, or Z. The personality, and the fit. If I've got to let go of some of those things, you talked about experience. Is that the first thing you recommend people let go, or is that there criteria on the resume as far as the quality of it, or gaps, or employment, or a typo or two?
When you're looking for someone to fill an administrative role, you're looking for somebody who is extremely detail oriented. We would recommend looking for a perfect resume for this position. If they don't have a lot of experience on that resume, that's one thing to take into consideration. But if there are typos, if there's a lot of gaps and spaces, that might be something that you really want to consider strongly, because you want somebody who's going to be following through on all of the details when they're your employee. If they're not presenting a perfect resume up front, that would be something that would be a red flag in my book.
That's a good point. So you're making the case that depending on the role, which of those variables you may relax changes. So for an administrative assistant, just paraphrasing, when you say not perfect, I would caution people, perfect from an accuracy standpoint, completely support everything Diane is saying. A sales resume with a couple of typos in it, I wouldn't worry much about.
Oh, yeah. Irrelevant.
I would argue you could switch that over to experience in sales with a ridiculously bad resume, misspelled this, gaps in that, missing the last half of the page. That's not what they're supposed to be doing. In her case here, she's saying admins, that you can't miss, and experience may not be quite as important. And so you got to let one of those two go. If, again, you realize that I'm not getting flow of applicants in this rural area that I want, or you have a sense of urgency where I really need somebody faster. And again, back to realtors. The speed with which you sell a house depends on those two variables, right? Where are you location wise, and what are you asking for? So you want to set the highest price possible to sell a house, and you guys do this with your clients all the time. They want the best of both worlds. They're in a rural area, they've got a house that could use some repair, and they want to ask the super high price for it. Sometimes they have to let one of those go. When she says perfect resume, I do caution people, formatting, okay, typos, accuracy. If you don't like the way they wrote it, if you don't like the fact that it's got lines on the side with the logo that's got their name in it, and I've seen people say, I hate the aesthetics of this resume, because they put everything in a box, and then there's a big box here and a third box there with bullets. I don't like bullets, I like numbers. Don't go there. I've literally had people say, I hate this resume, it's ugly as hell. Okay, but is everything spelled perfectly is the key.